Hello, and welcome to another episode of Survivor Social, a Survivor podcast where we dig into the social element of Survivor. My name is David, and I am joined by the incomparable juggernaut of TikTok and media in all kinds of ways, Tegwyth. Tegwyth, would you eat a worm if you were starving?
I mean, I've never been in that situation. My favorite comeback is put me in that situation and I'll tell you, but my first instinct is no.
Yeah, I mean, after Brando's description of 30% poop, I'm not sure I would be that willing. And I'm not necessarily, I don't think that's true. But even after someone saying that, I'm
Yeah.
not sure I would be able to stomach it.
You've got the mental image, you know?
Yeah, it's very visceral. I really felt a lot more of, Kendra's emotions this episode more than ever. And it's honestly because she was so animated. But that worm moment of all, I could feel it in my throat, just
Feel
like
it in my
wiggling.
throat. Ugh.
You know that scene from the food eating challenge in Survivor Amazon. Matthew eats something and he swallows it whole and he goes like and like traces where it will go down his throat and into his body, and he was sick for that. Just a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
honestly, I'm in the camp, honestly, of like, I don't miss the like food eating challenges. I am not someone who like really, really wants that necessarily. And so like, I feel like last season where we got, who do we get? We got Jamie and somebody else eating a worm.
Mhm.
And so the worm is coming back into effect, but this season it was not, the worm survived probably, or maybe actually probably not. I don't know.
And
Can it survive being in somebody's throat for a second?
I hope so. I think after all the seasons they've done in Fiji, the Earth needs to heal a little bit,
Yep.
especially in that like in those islands. So the less we can consume from it and tear down, I think maybe the better.
Yeah,
But
keep the worms in place.
yeah, exactly. The worm was, I was gonna say the worm was probably there before them, but I have a strong feeling it wasn't. But regardless, before we start, make sure to subscribe to Survivor Now here on YouTube, Spotify, and also catch us on our Instagram at Survivor Socialites and send us questions there. If you want to, have any burning questions they want to shoot to us on our way to answering every question that's ever been asked about Survivor, or at our email, survivorsocialpod@gmail.com. And we actually have a slew, I say actually as if people don't constantly send in great questions, but we have a slew of awesome questions. One of them asks, John specifically says, did you know Hayden Moss was almost on Survivor Nicaragua? We always get a lot of questions about Nicaragua.
It's always Nicaragua.
So Hayden was almost on Survivor Nicaragua, but was cut and moved to Big Brother 12 instead. I did not know that.
I did not know that. And then he came back.
And then he ended up making his way to Survivor anyway. It's like, that's what he was fated to do.
I love that. I honestly, Hayden is somebody that when Ryan and I are talking about like returnees, he's somebody that we're like it's like, oh, and Hayden, Hayden, I would like to see him back. Because honestly, I think he, has an not interesting story to tell, but like I think he's interesting gameplay, and I feel like I would love to see him back. So I didn't know that he was originally slated for Survivor, and honestly, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's super interesting. Fun fact of the day, y'all.
Seriously. And yeah, so he is an interesting character. Like he was in the Big Brother universe. He won. Spoiler. I mean, this happened so long ago, but he won. And it's so interesting when we get those rare instances of people from other franchises making their way onto Survivor. So yeah, I guess that's just what fate had for Hayden Moss. I think, yeah, good character. He'll always, rustle a little, some feathers, as one does from Blood versus Water. But our next question comes to us from Vince, and he asks, how would Steven Fishback be viewed if he won final immunity in Tocantins and brought Aaron to the end and won in the final two? How would he be viewed as a winner?
As a winner? I feel like he probably, I don't know. I feel like that's a really interesting question because honestly, obviously, like that didn't happen, right? So it's hard to speculate, but
Mhm.
I honestly feel like people would view him as a pretty high winner. I mean, people love JT played a perfect game, right? And I feel like if Steven was the number 2 to the perfect game, and the person who played the perfect game wasn't there, so what wouldn't have been a perfect game. I feel like it would have been um seen as a pretty good win because it was a pretty good game to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The thing I feel like I would say was people would maybe say that like, oh, he didn't actually wanted to like take the easy win, or something like that. But I feel like, I mean, no win is an easy win in Survivor. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think it probably would, the public would view it as a pretty solid win. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I think that also JT would be seen as a huge fallen angel
Mhm.
and they would want to see him back immediately. And I almost sort of think that it may give us a bigger edit for Erin. Like we might just see more of her as a result. Like we get some good quips when she's, dunking on Coach and she's really funny. But I'm not sure we necessarily see a lot from her otherwise.
Yeah.
But Stephen Fishback, I know you're out there. I want you to tell us, how you think
Ooh.
things would have played out if it was you and Erin at the end of Tocantins. Which jury votes would you have gotten? And do you think you would be considered? I know it's kind of hard to like separate yourself, but do you think you would be considered like one of the top tier winners? I'm partial because I love Steven.
I do
But
too. I love Steven too. I think he's really, I don't know. I love his gameplay. I think he's honestly pretty good television. And I guess I'm also partial because I love the know-it-alls. Like I love, that was kind of how I got into my Survivor fandom, right? Ryan listened to the know-it-alls and listened to a lot of Survivor podcasts. And he was like, just listen to this one. And then just one turned into like 15. And here we are 5 years later. Now I'm, doing one on my own. But like Stephen Fishback was one of the people to like introduce me to the Stephen Fishback and Rob Simpson, to like the greater Survivor community. And so I will kind of always love him for that. So he always has like a special place in my heart. So
yeah.
I think it's also a biased answer from me because I love Stephen Fishback so much.
Yeah. And what a great lens to bring you into the world of Survivor, right? Like once you get those super analytical, amazing perspectives, you're like, I need to hear the word through Steven. But maybe again, maybe that means that he would have gotten a lot of jury votes because he's a very compelling person. But anyway, our next question, about another potential winning situation. Kenny asks, why does Natalie White get so much hate? She played a smart game and she really stroked Russell's ego. People are too harsh on her. Do you agree?
Oh, they are way too harsh on Natalie. I love Natalie. I think honestly, I think people are mad because people think that the jury was bitter. And if you make a jury bitter, that's bad social gameplay. If there's one thing about me is I'm going to hate on Russell. Like that is the truth is I do not like Russell at all. I think that yes, he's had some interesting game moves, but like my personal opinion is if you are an overtly horrible person on and off the island, I don't really care how good your gameplay is. Like, I don't really want to think about you that much. So I really don't like him. And I think there are people who are the exact opposite of me and worship him. And I feel like that's where most of the Natalie hate comes from, is because she was seen as somebody who he dragged to the end. And just because the other people were mad, like, you know what I mean? Which is absolutely not the case. And so I think it's outrageous and I love Natalie. So that's my take. What's your take, David?
Yeah, I think those people who oppose you are entitled to their wrong opinions. And I understand that her game may not have been as flashy, and if we look just at the confessional accounts, she only gets some absurd number. I want to say maybe 19, 12, I don't know, throughout the course of an entire season, and Russell gets over 100 and something. I don't know, unprecedented. So when we do get this bias, it's like, this makes me think of Harry Potter. We see the story of Harry Potter through Harry's lens, so we hate Slytherins as a result because we're so skewed to the Gryffindor way of life. And maybe there are some bad Slytherins. There's enough proof in the Harry Potter cinematic universe and book universe to support this, but there's got to be some decent Slytherins who just want to live a nice, wholesome life and, you know, work hard and be good people. And unfortunately, our view of Slytherins are sullied based on the fact that we're seeing everything through the lens of a Gryffindor. So when the story is told through the lens of Russell Hantz, we're not really going to be that excited about people who aren't the Russell Hantz experience. So props to the people who are able to look past the edit a little bit and appreciate the fact that Natalie did stroke his ego, did play a really strong game. And look, if you make it to the end multiple times and lose, and there's something inherently wrong with the way that you're approaching your game. Like, look at Amanda Kimmel. She's not as abrasive as he is, but she's just still not able to seal the deal. And that doesn't mean that they're not amazing players, because they're so incredible in so many ways and set their own records in different ways. But that doesn't mean that the person who won didn't outclass them at the end of the day for that specific jury, because they did. But
that's
anyway.
That's why it's a three-pronged game, right? It's not just, you know, outplay, you know, it's not just outlast. You also have to outwit them. And if you're not outwitted, or if you're outwitted, then you're out.
Yeah. And what would be the point for a jury if the social game wasn't important? You need the jury to put that pressure and hold them accountable for the social game, because otherwise it would just be like, all right, let's score up the points at the end of the season to see who won as many challenges and who collected these many advantages and voted correctly this many times. Like, the jury is there to really say this is a social game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. It's why it's an interesting game. It would not be as interesting of a game if you didn't have the jury voting for the winner at the end, and if it's just America's vote. Like, people always will get upset, being like, "Oh my gosh, like, why can't we vote for the winner? Like, why?" And I heard this. Who did I hear? When I feel like I heard this a lot recently. I want to say it was like when Xander lost to Erica. They were like, "Oh man, like, this is so dumb. America should vote." Blah 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 blah. And I was like, well. It's not Big Brother, you know what I mean? Like, Big Brother, people can be like, anyone can watch at any point in time. And you know, with Survivor, you are not only going through your own lens of your biases, but you're also seeing the editors. You know, you're seeing the producers, you're seeing all of this stuff where it's the image will get distorted at every single, you know, another person telling the story. It's like a game of telephone. So, you know, we the audience are never the ones to be like, okay, yeah, that's actually a good game, that's a bad game. You have to trust the jury, trust the players. And that's why, you know, if a winner, whoever wins Survivor deserves to win, period, end of story. You know what I mean? So,
except for Mike Gabler. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Gabler, you deserved your win. I think that's a testament to, the people who were there. The people who were there know better than anyone else, and they were cast, and they were the people who make the jury have the distinction of getting to cast a vote, and that is their choice. This is the way it works. Why are we acting brand new? In the words of Shea Coulee on season 9, episode 3 of RuPaul's Drag Race, why y'all acting brand new? You know how this works. This is not the first season. In fact, this is the 45th season. You've had a lot to study.
Yep.
There are a lot of things that have changed over the franchise. The way that the jury votes and the jury works has not changed, thankfully.
One of the things that stayed the same.
So get up to speed, people, and just accept it, even if you don't like the way that it was served to you. But
absolutely.
Anywho, on to season 45. What a worm-filled, explosion-filled, passive-aggressive, lying Brando-filled episode. And I was quite entertained.
Yeah, it was a good one. I will say it was interesting. It's not as polarizing, this episode, as some of the previous ones, which is why I feel like it was, but it was still a really good one, right? This is a pretty cut and blank vote, cut, easy vote, whatever the phrase is. The vote made sense, right? Going into it, I felt like it was Brando. Like, we know it was a 3-2. It was going to end up being a 3-2 vote. Pretty standard vote in Survivor. And so I feel like in another season with 60 minutes, it would not have been as interesting of an episode. But because we didn't see Jeff until like 40 minutes in, because we got so much of camp life, because we got all of this stuff, I felt like it ended up being a very interesting and compelling story device episode, like telling everyone's story a little bit more, which is why I feel like the 90 minutes is going over incredibly well, let me just say.
As people say on social media, the 90-minute episode and then like the greater sign Is that how they do it? And then
Yep.
like the other
Yep.
ones after, I don't know. Or like the 90-minute episodes, greater sign, greater sign, greater sign. I'm not hip. I don't know what's going on. You're the TikTok superstar. You can tell me. But
That's exactly right.
oh my God, I'm so glad I got it right. But we open up and we're back at Reba, and Sifu is all like upset, honestly, pretty justifiably,
Yeah.
about the fact that his name came up. And Mama J says something that completely takes me off guard because I am not great at not coming up with an answer. If someone questions me, I want to provide an answer. But Mama J says, and I quote, I'm not ready to talk about it. How would you respond to someone prodding about where your vote lied?
I don't honestly, I don't know because the thing that I was speculating before going into this episode was what was going to obviously many other people how this was going to turn out. And what the drama was going to be back at Reba camp, right? And one of the things that I thought would be like they're not going to. So if you don't know this about Survivor, when you leave tribal council, you are not allowed to talk until you are back at your beach. So the journey back, the boat ride, the walking, them walking in a straight line, they are not allowed to talk until they get back to their camp. So that means that Dee, J Maya, and Julie did not have a chance to kind of like combine brains and come up with a story to Sifu because when we see them come back to camp, that's the first time that they're allowed to talk to each other. And so the thing I was speculating was with no time to just kind of get in a huddle and figure out what's what, how are these women going to get their stories straight? Because they went into the vote all wanting to vote Sifu, right? So I would like to think that if I was one that did not vote Sifu and I knew obviously one of these other two women voted Sifu, I would like to think my improv training would kick in. And I would like to think that we would be able to maybe not the best use of this word, but essentially gaslight Sifu into thinking that even though Sean said that he did not rate Sifu, say, well, I don't know why he would lie about that because 1, 2, 3, it wasn't us. And then hopefully Dee would get the like memo. I really wanted Dee to lie and be upset that somebody voted her name down. That's what I wanted to like happen and how I feel like I would have loved to see, but that's a lot of strategizing and planning when you're not allowed to talk to each other. So I honestly don't know. Long answer, long. I feel like I don't know how I would respond, but I would like to think that I would have had some time to put my brain around the problem and my improvness to take over to kind of lie to Sifu to kind of move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? What would you do? How would you respond?
Yeah, you got to go with the yes and it's hard. But as we established in our episode with Gandia, you got to always go with the yes and fuck you approach to things. But you got to also be in lockstep with the people that you're in an alliance with,
Yeah.
or at least in a voting block with. And it's hard when you haven't like chatted about this, right? Because you said they can't talk. I'm pretty sure in reality television and a lot of other realms, they refer to that as ice or hard ice, where you're not allowed to speak in any capacity. I know they also do that on Drag Race. I'm sure they do it on all kinds of reality competition shows and other shows, notwithstanding. But you literally can't, and it's at night, so it's not like you can like wink, wink,
Yeah.
nudge, nudge, no ASL and be signing to the person on the vote inconspicuously trying to get your point across. But I think they did the best they could, but it
Mhm.
really never occurred to me to be like, I'm not ready to talk about it yet, because that doesn't really pin you in any either direction. And I kind of appreciated that Mama J said that. But
I agree. I also think that that kind of shows why age diversity in a season is so important. Because part of me feels like that might come with just maturity, you know, with having time to, you know, having, you know, life's problems where you realize that, oh, you know what, maybe now is not the great now's not the best moment to open my mouth and add my 2 cents to it. Maybe the best thing for me to do right here is to kind of take a step back and think about it. And I feel like you get moments like that, things like that happen when you have, you know, why that's why diversity is important. And I feel like maybe this one thing that she said maybe comes with you know, just knowledge of life essentially.
yeah, that's an excellent point. I think it's part of the mental game. It's like when you're sitting across from your boss, or you're sitting across from someone in a job interview and they say nothing. And that's their tactic to try and get you to just start spilling everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a feeling if Mama J was in that situation, she would just cross her arms and say nothing because she knew better, and she would know this is a tactic to try and get me to speak, or this is a tactic to try and expose how I truly feel about this. But Mama J, as a lawyer as well,
Yep.
is keen enough to know I'm not going to be fooled by you, Sifu. But
Yeah.
anywho, we make our way to Bello the next day, and everyone's talking about food. As I mentioned, this is when Kendra tries to eat the worm. Love her reactions. And okay, this is a part where I am going to agree with Gandia a little bit from our previous episode where she talks about her distaste for certain things related to Drew, because we get a really funny montage of Kendra things, but it's undercut by what I perceive to be an incredibly contrived, forced analogy of Drew being like, people on this show are like marbles coming from different places. And if I wanted to be, lectured at by some random person, I would be back in grad school, but I'm not. So I'm sorry, Drew. I just do not find you very compelling television. Sure, you're probably a great person, but I do not find you very entertaining. Is it just me? Do me and Gandia just like have this little army where we're like, we don't want Drew on our televisions?
Well, I would like to say I do see where you're coming from, but I would also like to come back with the fact that later on in the episode, I'm skipping a little bit, when Austin comes back with the little parchment about the amulet. The first thing that Drew says is, "Oh, so we got to vote him out," which I think is great television. Like that kind of like I feel like I love the Austin and Drew duo. I was the first time I ever live tweeted an episode was this past episode. Don't know if I'm going to do it again, but I did it. And in that moment, I was like, that's the kind of friend that everybody needs. No questions asked. Oh yeah. Okay. We're getting rid of them. Cool. And I kind of just love that moment. So while I feel like I do see where you're coming from, I do think that there are little aspects that we wouldn't get with other players, such as Drew just like shutting down an alliance. There are things that I feel like are very specific to Drew, which I think adds an compelling why he's a compelling character for the season, because I feel like everyone would normally just go yes and he didn't. And so I feel like, while I don't know if it's the best gameplay, I do think it's compelling television. So yeah, I agree and also disagree with you slightly. Because I see the little specs. I feel like when we get down to the merge, which is coming soon, and all this stuff, we'll see even more come out, personally.
That's true. I agree. I think he's sort of like Emily in the sense that they're willing to just be like, nope, I don't agree. And I do appreciate that. And I also think that when Drew doesn't think and it's in the moment, like I like him a lot in the moment during the episodes, but it's in confessional where I think the gears are turning and he's like trying to formulate a quippy, funny way to say something or like an insightful way to say something. I'm like, Drew, I really like you when you are being in the moment and other people are talking to you. His interactions with other people, right, when he's himself, I really like that. I do find him interesting. And like you said, that moment that you were mentioning, I found that very entertaining. And I also really like the way that he was just shutting down the Brando alliance, even if I didn't agree with it necessarily, which I kind of do, because we had Emily sitting right there and it would have looked really suspect if he had just like gone along with it. But regardless, I do enjoy stuff that he's doing when he's just being Drew in the moment. But I think, we all want to be entertaining when the cameras are on us and we're being interviewed. So I can't really fault him for that, but that's true. Thank you for grounding me back in reality.
I try.
So we are at Lulu and Jake falls again. And I'm kind of concerned about him. And we get this really nice flashback where he's talking about the fact that he had this weight loss journey and he struggled with disordered eating. And I found it really admirable that he was able to talk so candidly about that. You're sharing this with millions of people, and it added a new layer to him and like complexity and vulnerability. And I already like Jake. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways. His accent is just automatically endearing. He's great television. He's got a good personality. He comes up with good quips. How did you feel after this? Were you like, I don't need to see another flashback?
No,
Or were
I,
you
I
like,
I thought it was fine. I love hearing about people's stories. People that go on Survivor are not just Survivor, right? They have other things, aspects to them. They have other stories to tell and all that stuff. So I really was here for it. What I didn't necessarily love was and I've said this in previous podcasts, but I don't love when Survivor uses something like a mental or a physical health scare, an injury to promote the show. I don't. There's just something about it that is like slightly leaves a weird taste in my mouth. And I was super nervous because this is the second time that they used Jake falling to promote essentially the episode. So obviously, like me, like a lot of other people were worried he was going to get pulled. I'm very happy that was not the case, but it just leaves me thinking, like, why was that what was used to promote? But I am happy we got the story about Jake. Like, I love learning about everyone who's on the island. And it's just one of those things that is just like interesting to me because I don't know, like I said, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But tell us more about these people. I love them. That's one of the reasons why I was sad that Brando went out this episode because I felt like he was one of the people that we really didn't know. He had 2 episodes in a row with no confessionals. And I just was like, I understand that it's not his story. Like this season is not his story, it's the winner's story and everything that goes along with it. But that's one of the reasons why I was like so sad to see Brando go because I just felt like we didn't hear enough from him yet. So
yeah,
but I loved learning about Jake, definitely.
yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, I think that's almost a symptom of the way that reality TV has always been. I think reality TV used to capitalize on every possible thing it could, even if it was exploitative for certain people. And I think in a large way, we've gotten away from that. I feel like it's no longer like the sizzle reel of like these horrible things happening to people that we're just going to try and
Yeah.
capitalize on. And I hope to think that they would only do that if they knew he was okay, you know? But either
Mhm.
way, I do think it's a little bit like, are we just highlighting this because we want people to watch? And yeah, it's a little weird. And I do think that's a symptom of like when people think of reality TV and they try and relegate it to this like, oh, it's trashy, oh, it's just bad people doing bad things, and it's like the junk food of reality of television. And it's like that is honestly something that we can't deny when things like that are used
Yeah.
as like the next on Survivor, which is a little disappointing. But I like you said, I'm very happy that Jake is okay. We do get Katura looking for an idol, and um, I love her, and I just want her to do so well. And when I see things like this, it makes me a little sad inside because I'm like, I just want you to just have everything you want in life. I want you to clown on Bruce, and I want you to win. And I don't know. How do
Yeah.
you bounce back socially after you get caught looking for an idol? Because I think it's better now than what it
Uh-huh.
used to be. Because I think it used
Yeah.
to dig you in a really big grave because
Yeah.
everyone's sort of looking for idols now. But like, how do you bounce back from that, Tegwyth?
I think it's having a good alliance, having people who are willing to kind of like, not highlight it as much. I think it was really good of Austin, good gameplay for Austin to just be like, "Hey, this is why I said that because I didn't want you to like be any more obvious than you were being." But it's one of those things where I feel like you said, it's not as big of a thing anymore because everyone's doing it, and um part of me feels like more people have gotten caught and we just haven't seen it. You know what I one of those things. So I honestly don't feel like it's as big of a deal. I feel like it was used to show that Austin and Couture have a relationship, have an alliance, rather than showing Couture being like, oh man, I got caught with my hand in the cookie jar again. And so because I honestly don't feel like it's that big of as big of a deal as it used to be. So I
Yeah.
felt like I was like trying to see what else could they be showing this to us? Like why else would they be showing this to us? And I really do think it's to show that number one, like Austin has an amazing, amazing social game.
Hmm.
Austin's social game is so compelling to watch. It's like everybody knows that he's dangerous, but he's like so compelling that they don't even care. He's
I
had a
thought it was Caleb. Am I misremembering?
Oh, sorry. Did I say Austin?
Yeah, about 17 times.
Caleb.
But I
It
was
was
like,
Caleb.
I fully believed you.
I'm sorry. It was Caleb. I was
Okay.
picturing Caleb in my head, but no, I meant Caleb. I'm sorry,
Got it.
everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
But no, he has, like I said, such a compelling social game, and everyone just like, flocks to him, and it's so dangerous, but like no one even cares that much almost.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's why it was used.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. I've been saying Austin for the last 20 minutes, and I've been meaning Caleb, except for the time that I meant Austin.
Except for the time that you did mean Austin. But yeah, I think the connotation of looking for an idol being caught is still negative, but I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. You're right. And Caleb does say, yeah, he's trying to get in with everybody. And he also specifically pinpoints Kelly. And he says, Kelly, in confessional, he says, Kelly is the best player on this tribe. Do you agree with that? I don't necessarily know. All right, let's take stock for a second. Like, let's hold up. So we've got Bruce, who is coming on a little strong and rubbing people the wrong way and being a little bossy, as we saw with the coconuts. It's not just Katurah who agrees that he's being a little bit much. We've got Katurah herself, who was just looking for an idol, so that doesn't really look great for her. Yeah. Do we agree? Is Kelly just like automatically the best person on this tribe?
Well, this is one of those things where I feel like perception becomes reality. If somebody perceives you as the best player on the tribe, doesn't really matter if it's true or not. But then also, it's almost like a catch-22. If somebody perceives you as the best player on the tribe, then are you actually the best player on the tribe? Because if people realize that you're the best player on the tribe, then maybe you're not. You know what I mean? That's why this is especially in the new era. That's why this game is so complicated and convoluted, because like you can't be too much of a threat, but you also got to be a little bit threatening, or else you won't get any votes at final tribal council. So I honestly do feel like, though, on this tribe, other than if we're just talking about the Bellow people that were on the tribe, which is Jake, Bruce, Kelly, and Katurah, I do feel like Kelly is maybe the most versatile player on the tribe. I think the fact that she was playing the middle with Brando on the original Bellow tribe is a very key thing here, because she came in here with a relationship with Katurah, with a relationship with Bruce, and with Jake. And maybe if they're not on all the same levels, but it is at least a relationship. So on their small tribe of 5 people, I feel like maybe because she has the most like overt relationships with people, I do actually think that makes her somebody with maybe the best like overt game on that tribe specifically. So I do think it's really good for Caleb to try to make a connection with her, which obviously he did. I do think that if this connection stands like lasts a little bit, they will be a very tough force to fight, because I feel like they're both strong in so many ways. So yeah, I thought that was a very interesting thing that he noticed, and that he decided to capitalize on, which I thought was interesting. How did you feel about Caleb going and trying to make a connection with Kelly? Because he said, like, I don't know if my connection with her is as good as the other ones.
Yeah, I think it's always a good thing to establish relationships with people, even if you haven't really gotten really deep with them. You got to start somewhere. And I just appreciate that Caleb is willing to put himself out there with all these people, because as he says later, I don't want to be coming for someone from like a bad point of view and oppositional point of view. I want to be close to them and then stab them in the back, which I thought was very smart. And we will get into all of the backstabbery and more after a quick little break. BRB.
Hi, Survivor Now podcast listeners. I am Katie from KT Designs, better known as Katie Tedesco Art on both Instagram and Etsy. I have been designing and selling Survivor products for over 7 years at my Etsy shop, including replicas like hidden immunity idols and Survivor trading cards with all of the players' stats on the back. I am so grateful for Survivor Now for giving me this shout out and helping me reach even more superfans. I love listening to their podcast. So if you are looking for some really unique reality TV products for yourself or to give a super fan in your life, come check out my Etsy shop at www.etsy.com/shop/KatieTedescoArt.com.
And we are back, and we are at Reba, and Sifu is trying to scare the women, J, Maya, Julie, and Dee, with his fake idol. And honestly, out of all of the fake idols that we've seen, it's kind of convincing. What do you think?
Yeah, it's convincing, but I don't give Sifu props for that. I blame production because if you make idols look like little things that you could find at any kind of party city at any day, you know what I mean? Then
Party City?
then anything will look like a fake idol or an amulet.
Shots
It's
fired.
a big problem that I have because who was this? I was talking to somebody recently. Maybe it was Ryan. I think it was Ryan. And he was like, we were watching the Eliza, like, it's a fucking stick thing. And Ryan went, we would never get a moment like that today. We will never, because if everything is obviously a fake, everything looks fake. Everything looks fake. So we would never have a moment like that. It's just like they're trying to manufacture a moment when they're trying to manufacture fake idols that they literally did last season. And I'm just like, just make it more compelling. Maybe if you make it like a crazy cool looking thing, people won't believe that's a real idol, because for the past 5 seasons, it's just been some plastic beads on twine. Like, I don't know. I'm sorry. Clearly this has gotten me heated. It's just like one of those things that it is. Let me just say, fine. You're right. Sifu, it is a great idol for now, because the idols are they look fake. Everything looks fake. The amulets are just beads. I'm sorry.
So what I'm hearing is that people need to come in with earrings of extravagant beads, and right as they get onto the beach, they need to like hide them for later.
Yeah.
Or they need to like sew things into their clothes, like Kel in the beef jerky, or Richard Hatch and the matches that he put in places I do not want to say. Honestly, you're right. It's getting a little bit Hobby Lobby, little like craft store kind of, and that's okay when that's all that it was. But even when the show is leaning into it a little bit, it's becoming a little bit too much like, you better do this. You better make these fake idols. Like, the purity of the original game is just, yeah.
But it's just like a silly little thing that bugs me. I don't know why. There's got to be one thing a season, right? We've got the title sequence back. We're getting the auction. I got to have something. This is my something. But while we're talking about that fake idol, I want to bring up, why again do Dee and Julie seem to think that Sifu has an idol? That doesn't make any sense to me. Dee and Julie were literally there when Austin found his idol. And I mean Austin this time. They were literally there when on the Reba Beach, which is where they're at right now, where Austin found his idol. So I really do not understand why they think that Sifu has an idol. And it's not just like they're playing it up to Sifu's face. Like in confessional, Julie is saying like, oh yeah, we're worried that Sifu has an idol. Not like,
no, I get it. I 100% get it. And can I tell you why I think it's 100% valid and I would be thinking the same exact thing? Because this is the new era, and they're gonna pull out as many idols, advantages, trinkets, Mario Party little party favors out of their butts as they possibly want to. They just went on a random like trip today, and they potentially got amulets that they could then turn into idols, but
has Sifu ever gone on a trip?
No, but there are things that are just raining from the skies. It's like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, but for advantages. And I would be thinking, there is such a high amount of advantages and idols. There's a chance that in the last couple days since the idol has been found on the Reba Beach, that he could have possibly found another one. Perhaps it's my fault for being paranoid and skeptical, but I would be paranoid and skeptical and think, why not have another idol? These producers have hidden them in fish, for God's sakes, on season 42. Or as we saw on this season, Brando said in an exit interview, he had an advantage sewn into his buff, saying that he could switch tribes if he wanted to. They are trying so many things at this point that I genuinely think that there are always going to be more idols. We found one, oh, immediately one back in place. Not if you play one, it's back in place. We found one,
I
another
don't
one
feel
in
like
place.
there's any evidence of that. I feel like in the past, and obviously they change things up, right? But like, I feel like if anything, this season there are less idols in play because producers and other people have heard the complaints of the people watching. And I feel like, and granted, maybe they're just honestly paranoid, but I would have loved to hear a confessional where they say, man, I know that Austin, and because that's the thing, we haven't heard them bring up Austin's idol at all, which is why I am feeling like they almost forgot about it. Because maybe that's the editing then. It's just like I feel like there is not much evidence of production re-hiding idols when idols are still like being held, right? Maybe they rehid the one on Lulu. Like that one, I would understand. If they were on Lulu's beach, I would understand if they were worried that Sifu had an idol. But they're on Reba's beach where they already. So I just feel like it's one of those things where if you look at the evidence, there's not much evidence of production like putting things in. And the fact that we haven't heard either of them say anything about Austin's idol, that it's like one of those things that I feel like we're not, to me, it almost feels like they forgot about it. They definitely didn't, but it's just like one of those things that I feel like we're like missing one little thing when it comes to this, big, like, that's all I mean. It's just like, I feel like we're missing, so like the audience is like missing some evidence or something.
You're right. No, you're right. I think this is where a case where people such as myself take the way that the Survivor universe has just like exploded with idols and new advantages and just been like, well, I don't know what could be thrown, so I'm just going to assume that anything could happen. And to be honest, that's the kind of gameplay that I am partial to. I am partial to the expect that something is going to happen because as soon as you get complacent and as soon as you start making rules in your head about what should be happening, they're going to subvert them just because they can and just because they think that having those dopey music, little bumbly trombone background music where they reveal a player doesn't know what's going on, they think that is the money. And I think that personally, I wish I was more rational like you in that way and believed the Survivor production that there would be these set rules, but I don't trust anything about the production anymore. I think they could do anything. I think that they could say, you know what? We're going to stop in the middle of the season. We're going to bring everyone back individually. We're going to give everyone 3 idols. We're going to give them 2 sandwiches. We're going to change locations and we're going to resume. And they could do that. And I would say, honestly, not shocked, not surprised, even though I should be. But I'm not fazed by anything they do anymore because they've thrown out their rule book, you know? But
yeah, that is true. That makes a lot of sense, and that makes total. It's just one of those things where I feel like because we're not hearing that from Julie and Dee, it just is confusing to me, honestly. But I do think it makes for compelling television. And I was worried that if Reba went back to tribal, which they didn't, I was worried that was going to come into play and like unfortunately like come back on J Maya and save Sifu. But obviously they did not go to tribal, so didn't end up being a problem.
Reba McEntire? You mean Reba McEntire, who is famous for the song Fancy, which is actually just a cover of Bobby Gentry's Fancy? This is just my one per episode little speech that I need to give out to remind people that Bobby Gentry did indeed record Fancy first. But anywho, we are on Bello, and we are talking about one of my favorite things in the entire universe, Pokemon, because Drew, as if I haven't grown to love him even more throughout the course of this conversation, he plays Pokemon competitively, which I very much appreciate. And Brando is a big Pokemon fan too, so props to them for just being cool Pokemon fans. And I just loved watching Emily's face as these conversations just continued. And you can tell how much she's grown socially, because I feel like previously Emily would have been like, this is a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Why are they talking about this? But she was just nodding along and smiling and doing what a good social player does. And honestly, I was pretty impressed. Did you pick up on Emily's facial expressions during
I love
this?
Emily. I love that she was just kind of there for the conversation, but didn't really have much to add. I feel like being a fly on the wall as much as possible in Survivor is maybe the best place to be. So the fact that she was there for all of this, I felt very like a good place for her. I also thought it was funny that many people on the internet also noticed. I believe it was in this point in time where they were talking about aliens again. So Emily has been in 2 conversations now about aliens. And I just like think that that's hysterical and so funny.
I think that means something. You know, I think that means that, Emily is going to be part of some huge conspiracy theory at the
Yeah,
end of the
I
season.
think it must. That's what has to happen, right? But I really feel like, this I loved, seeing this bond between Drew and Brando right before Brando is like, "Yep, oh right, I feel like we should do a Nerds Alliance. Great." And then Drew goes, "No, thank you," and walks away. He didn't say no, thank you, but he essentially says no. Which is one of the first times I feel like, well, not one of the first times, but I feel like we don't often see people say no to alliances so blatantly. Obviously it ended up working well for Drew, not so well for Brando, but that was a shocking moment to me, and I want to know your thoughts on that, David.
I was a little shocked too, but I put the pieces together a little bit and thought, he's trying to win over Emily. If he is so quickly going to just agree with Brando, I think it makes his word a little less valuable to Emily, right? And if I saw someone wheeling and dealing and lying in front of me, I would be a little skeptical about the fact that maybe they're wheeling and dealing in front of me, right? So
Yeah.
I honestly appreciated the fact that uh, Drew did this because we saw a new dimension. And it almost sort of said, like, you know what, Brando, you're going home.
Yeah.
Emily, I want you to see that I'm with you and I'm willing to just straight up tell this person in front of you that I'm not going to work with them.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I will say I do feel like it is a very gutsy thing to do. Having be like pardon me, being like so involved, because Emily could have just gone right back to Brando and been like, "Oh my gosh, what was that? How I can't believe he did that. Like that's such a weird thing to do. I don't know if I could work with somebody like that. Like I think let's get out Drew this episode." So I really feel like he had to, it was a gutsy thing to do, and part of me feels like it wasn't really strategy. But obviously definitely was, but it's just like one of those things that was like it could have gone either way. It went really well for Drew and not so well for Brando. But it was like it was a nerve-wracking little moment. I remember I was sitting on the couch and I went, "What? Did he just say did he just say no? What?"
Yeah, that was very brazen. I do have to ask you, who in the Survivor history would you openly say no to in front of other people if they asked you to be in an alliance?
I'm assuming Russell is not a part of this because it would be Russell. That's okay. We're taking Russell out of this. Okay, that's fine. Who would I say no to? Um, oh, I don't know. She might cry. My first thought was Lil.
Lillian Morris? How
Which is
dare
so
you?
mean. I know. It's just I feel like I don't know that I could have an alliance with somebody who is not that strategic, but also
Well, that's very funny because my first thought was Johnny Fairplay.
oh,
And
that's a good one.
and I'm watching him on House of Villains right now, and he is very entertaining. Johnny Fairplay, I think the world of you as a strategist, especially on Survivor Pearl Islands. You're a big reason why I wanted to get this Drake tribe buff in the first place. However, you're a little snake,
He's
and
a
you
little
know that. And I would be very nervous about joining an alliance with you, especially in front of other people. So
yeah. That's a great one. That's a really good one. Somebody in my comments over here said Abby Maria. I feel like that's an interesting one. I feel like if it was in front of the right people, I feel like I could work with Abby Maria. You know, I feel like Johnny Fairplay
But what
might.
if you stole her bracelet?
Oh, well then we'll be best buds and we'll go to the final 2 together. And it'll be a tie and we'll both win $1 million.
This and other lies that Survivor has in store for us. But yeah, things are just wild on Bello. This is where all of the drama lies this episode. And
Yeah.
honestly, they didn't even have to lose immunity for them to be super entertaining because there was all kinds of things that were happening there. But
Yeah.
we move on to Lulu. And Bruce basically says that Katura's idea about not eating before a challenge is maybe the dumbest thing he's ever heard. And how would you feel if someone said that to you, friend or not? If someone just said to you, like, that thing that you just said, that may be like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're
Oh,
gonna take offense.
I would smile and laugh in the moment and then go home and complain about it to somebody, probably to Ryan. And I would remember it for a while. So yeah, that was and I loved how what Bruce, not only did Katura say like his Bruceisms or whatever, but Bruce always says, I'm gonna be Bruce for a second. Like that's what he said. He was like, I'm gonna be Bruce for a second. And I went, that's so funny. I just thought that was such a funny thing that we heard from 2 different people, one of them being the person who said it out loud. I love Bruce. I think he's such great television. I think he's a great guy too, but you know, he brings some really great moments to the TV screen. So that was a very interesting moment. Maybe not the most strategically, socially good moment for Bruce, but still an interesting television moment nonetheless. What would you do?
That is very tough. It depends on my relationship with the person.
Yeah.
Because if it was someone I was friends with, I would say, go fuck yourself. But I just love Bruce, and I feel like he could say anything to me, and I would just love it and eat it up. I just feel like he's very compelling. But again, I haven't lived with him in the middle of a Fijian jungle when I was starving. So I do think that would play a role. But yeah, Bruce, I was going to say Bruce is just making waves in every way, and I'm glad that we get to see more of him. I think that there was a point in time where I was really concerned that we wouldn't get enough Bruce in our lives after 44, and I'm glad we're getting our Bruce fix after all. But we get to this immunity challenge. We can yada yada through it unless there's anything particularly exciting that you really want to touch on.
I honestly don't even remember the challenge, so.
And that is A-okay, because all we need to know is that Reba wins first, and Lulu wins second, and Bello is going to tribal council.
Yeah.
And as the winners, Reba gets to choose to go on a journey, and J Maya wins the rock, paper, scissors, and they pick Kelly from Lulu. Kelly, supposedly the best player on the entire Lulu tribe, and Austin from Bello with the hopes to reconnect. People are saying, like, specifically J Maya, oh, I want to, see Austin so we can strategize. And and Austin's being like, no, that won't happen to his other tribe mates. I feel like he kind of had to say that in front of his other tribe mates.
Let me just say, I feel like if I want to work with somebody on Survivor, and I love J Maya, I love her. I don't know that if I want them to work with me, that I'm going to say in front of everyone and Jeff Probst, I know that you're on this different tribe now and probably trying to form bonds, but let's go to this thing and let's do a little download, debriefing. Let's see what's going on. How would Austin respond to that? Like, I feel like he can't be like, yeah, I'm so excited. This will be great. I'm going to tell all the secrets of the Bello tribe. Like, he can't do that. And so I just was like, when J Maya did that, I went, no, like, because not only does it put the person that you're trying to get the information from in a bad position, but it also, I think, maybe shows everyone else that you're too open about your strategy. Because because I'm thinking like, okay, worst case scenario, she's put on the spot and she doesn't know how to answer, which I have felt like that many times in my life. And so what comes out is something that she is actually the truth, but then she regrets it right afterwards. If that's the case, then everybody else knows that maybe if she's ever put on the spot again, like say in tribal council, somebody else's secret's going to come out, and maybe next time it won't be as like, as little as I just want to learn about something, so I feel like it just puts Maya in a really bad position, because everybody saw that, and so I literally just went, gosh, no, Maya, don't say that, because it wasn't even for the position Austin was getting put in. It was because I'm worried that that's going to come back to haunt her in the future.
Wait, you're telling me that based on the edit, you don't think J Maya is the winner of the entire season?
I,
Oh my god.
I
That's
know.
what I thought this whole time.
I know. That's a hot take. I know it's a hot take. I know that we all thought episode 2 didn't hear a word. No, episode 3 we didn't hear from her, meaning that she must be the winner.
It's just like the Heather edit from Survivor 41, and she is clearly the winner of Survivor 41. So, So,
great fire making.
Very much so. On Bello, we see people decide they're going to have a civilized scrambling. Do you think this is the term of the new type of scrambling that we're seeing? Do we think this is like when voting blocks were introduced and really solidified in millennials versus Gen X? Is this like a new Survivor like strategy and term? Or is this just gonna come and go with the wind? Like,
I think it's gonna come and go with the wind. I will say, I'm pretty sure it was Emily who said like civilized scrambling, and I was like, that is someone who's been to tribal council 3 times. That's somebody who has been there once or twice and knows their way around tribal council. I feel like ever so often we see this like, civilized scramble when it's very obvious that who's in the middle. And it's very obvious who's on the either side. So why scramble so much? Because we know for a fact, Drew has already established that Drew doesn't want to work with Brando. So why would Drew and Brando go talk? We've already established that Austin and Drew are a duo. And because they're together, Brando and what's her name? Kendra are a duo. So why would the two go talk with the other two? You know what I mean? So because the lines are so distinctly drawn, the only people who really need to talk are Kendra and Brando, Austin and Drew, and then Emily, Kendra and Brando, and Emily, Austin and Drew. It's only like 4 conversations really need to happen. So I feel like that's when we'll see this quote unquote civilized scramble. I don't think it's something that's going to happen that often because it's very rarely this, black and white. But yeah, I feel like it's not something that we'll see that often. Or maybe, what do you think, David? Do you think it's something that we're going to like, gameplay is so high now that it's just like, okay, now it's all calm and we don't actually have to scramble?
No, I agree with you. I don't think that that's something that people can actually do. I think that it's a symptom of Emily being like, I've been through this situation many times. Let's just try and make this a little less painful. And truly, the best thing to come out of this, besides Emily's coining of this term, is the fact that she keeps calling Brando Brendo.
I know.
And that just made me cackle more than anything else. Because it's like, I understand that these people on your tribes, you may not know exactly how to spell their name if you're gonna, vote for them at tribal council, but you should at least know how to say their name if you're gonna repeat it to other people.
But she was saying it right in conversations. She was saying Brando in other conversations. So it was like just in confessional. And I was so curious about that. I also had a pet peeve to say, as we're talking about Emily in confessionals, early on in the episode, one of the producers had Emily doing a confessional with her buff in backwards. And on backwards, it was like the white part was showing. And I'm like, she's doing a confessional. Can we not tell her to move the buff around? But okay, whatever. Sorry. No, but I totally noticed that too. I thought something was wrong with my speaker. I thought that it was just like cutting out all the time.
Yeah. Throwing a lot of disrespect on this man's name on the episode he gets voted out, but all right. So we go to the Advantage Island excursion thing. They hike up the mountain as they do, and then they have a choice. Either you get this amulet that all of you get to like sort of participate in, sort of similar to like the past seasons, where the less people there are, the more powerful the amulet becomes, or they get sandwiches and a drink. I'm all for sandwiches. Maybe, and honestly, I'm not even starving. And I'm all for the sandwiches. Did you feel similarly as Austin?
I first off want to say I really love this use of food and I love this use of the amulet. I was a fan of the amulet in 42 when it came around. The difference between now and 40 when we first saw the amulet in 42, it was the first. These people did not know each other. They did not know each other from Adam. And in 42, they were like thrust into this
Wasn't he
essentially.
on season 33?
Who?
Adam.
But and in 42, they were forced into this alliance of three. Who was it? It was Drea, Hai, and Lindsay. And this now they were all on different tribes, right? So their alliance didn't really matter. They knew that they had one other person. So when they used it then, they had no established relationship. So why not get the amulet? This time, Merge is coming around the corner. They don't know each other. Austin and J. Maya know each other, but Kelly doesn't know either of them. They all have their own alliances. They all have their own, relationships. Austin has an idol. You know what I mean? There's all of this. A game has happened, right? Which is why I love the amulet here, because it is not just to cut. Like it's not an obvious answer to take the amulet. You know what I mean? Because I don't know if I can trust these guys. I have an alliance back there that I can trust. So why trust, these two? Which I find incredibly compelling. I think, and at first I thought that J. Maya and Kelly were making the correct decision. After discussing it with Ryan, and he now convinced me. And I think Austin was making the right decision for Austin, right? Austin, I think, was making the correct decision. And I think the other two were. But then Ryan explained to me, he was like, but think about it, Tegwyth. Kelly doesn't know either of those people at all. The other two were on a tribe together. So why would she then put herself in the line of fire? Because that's what this is, when she doesn't have to. And the way he explained it to me, I was like, why? Of course. I wish I would have thought about it like that, because that makes total sense. And now I'm super nervous for Kelly because, so I think it's a very compelling twist. I am totally here for the use of the food with it too. So I think it's just like very interesting. And like I said earlier, I loved Drew's response, okay, we gotta get him out now. But super interesting. How did you feel? Well, you would have taken the sandwiches, right?
Probably, because I think, well, it depends on what tribe I was on to begin with. It depends on which advantages I had the opportunity to get beforehand. But I think if this is not the first time you've been exposed to an advantage, I wouldn't risk it. You can't go for it every single time. I mean, probability wise, it's not the worst thing in the world, but based on Survivor history, I would be sort of like, okay, I don't know this person. I'm going to play it safe and eat a sandwich. And we can still bond with each other without having to get this amulet. I think it's tough. And I appreciate that they did this, like you said, after alliances had been established, because you do it during the first challenge and it's like, okay, we got to make this quick alliance and we're going to be friends, but will this work out? Who knows? And it didn't really work out the way that I thought it would in Survivor 42, but it's tough. And I still thought it was a very compelling device, although the part that confuses me is just how many layers there are. It's like I'm fed and I'm at home watching this, and I feel like I still need to take notes to know, like, oh, after the first one is gone, this happens. And after two people are gone, this happens. But you can only play it till the final six. It's like first we had girl math, then we had dog math, then we had all kinds of math, and now we have survivor math. And I'm like, personally, I can't keep up. Maybe it's just because I'm not good at mental math, but this is just many, many parts to this, and I can't imagine being on that island and being starved while trying to remember all of the intricacies of how a certain amulet works. This is just a little too convoluted for me.
So your name, you don't like amulet, or are you just saying if you were a player you wouldn't want to use the amulet because it's got so many layers?
I like the amulet. I just don't think my short-term memory is good enough to remember how it works.
That's so funny. That's so funny. I will say, I feel like the amulet's one of my favorite things from the new era that we have. Like, I am also somebody. Oh, something else that we saw interesting in this episode that has now been shown twice. The do or die. No, what's it called? The dice.
The
The
shot in
shot
the
in the dark
dark?
has been used as currency now twice by Emily and by Brando, which I think is very, very interesting. One time it worked, one time it did not.
That's true.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's a good bargaining chip. Well, it's interesting because, yeah, Brando offers it, and Drew's like, no,
No.
no, no, your money's not good here.
Yeah.
We're all good. Little did he know that was not the case. But,
Yeah.
and I also like the little tidbit before we go to Tribal where Jay Maya is like, this is the worst day of, or like, this is the best day of Survivor ever. And Austin's like, this is the worst day of Survivor ever.
Yeah.
I appreciated that. But
I did too. I did too. I thought it was
so
very interesting.
we make our way to Tribal. And actually, before that happens, Austin tells Drew immediately about the amulets, which just solidifies the fact that they're a good pairing together.
Mhm.
How relieving and how comforting must it be to say, like, I can tell this person everything that's going on. There's a person where no matter what happens, I can just be candid and be like,
Yeah.
I don't like this person. I don't trust this person. I've got an idol. Do you think for your social game to have it flourish in an ideal situation, you have that one person who you can just be completely transparent with? Is that integral to a perfect social game?
I think probably. I think unless you are a 100% introverted person who doesn't really like to talk to anybody on a normal day-to-day basis, because the thing is like humans need interaction to just day-to-day life, right? That's just something that is true. And we also a lot of times do better when we are able to bounce ideas off of another person. And so if you don't have another person that you can trust to bounce ideas off of, it's not, then you're just bouncing the ideas in your head. And that is when you get too much in your head and essentially you get paranoid. And, I'm thinking like Lindsay from, what was that, 43? When there were people that she should have been able to trust. She couldn't, she didn't, and she got too paranoid and was then voted out because of it. And so it's one of those things where you have
Which
to,
is a shame.
yeah,
Because Lindsay Carmine was set up so well, and she had such good relationships and was playing such a strong game otherwise. I had her as my winner pick at the
I love,
time, and
yeah,
then she shot herself in the foot. So you are so on the money, Tegwyth.
yeah. It's just one of those things where you have to be able to 100% trust them. And sometimes you choose the wrong person. It doesn't always work out, but sometimes you choose the right person. Like, we were talking about Steven and JT earlier, like Dom and Wendell, like Carolyn and Jam Jam, and throw in Carson in there too. There are some times where it happens, but then there are some times where it ends up not, working out in your favor. This is not Survivor, but I'm thinking of if anybody is watching Big Brother, I'm watching the season of Big Brother, and there was a player who essentially is now voted out, and she told somebody some like information, and that other person went back and ran with that information to somebody else because you can't always trust everybody. And so sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you really don't want to be in the middle where like Lindsay was, where you're trying to trust them and then but you can't make yourself, and then you become a little bit too much in your head and too paranoid.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And we get to Tribal.
Before we go to Tribal, I do want to talk about something in Emily's decision, because this was something that was cut out of episode 1, right? But Kendra, if you can remember, went to Lulu because Bello won. They got to send somebody to Lulu, and made some prior relationships. She talked to people. She ended up putting a vote on Brandon, I'm pretty sure. So one thing that I think is interesting that I really would have loved to learn more about, but because they cut it out of the first episode, I feel like they can't story-wise, add this in. Why the relationship between Emily and Kendra is not better. Because Emily, it's the only person that Emily knew going into this because she knew Kendra. And so part of me feels like this vote, specifically Kendra's reaction, is coming from the fact that Emily's only relationship to anybody on this tribe was with Kendra. And so how it ended up going, Emily ended up blindsiding Kendra and obviously ended up blindsiding Brando. But I really want to hear, and maybe this will be something that we'll find out with post-game interviews, or maybe this will, whatever. I want to find out why that was not brought into play at all that we saw in this episode, because I do feel like that would have been maybe a very important deciding factor. Because relationships are everything on Survivor. And if you have a relationship with somebody, if you know that person, having just somebody that you can be like touch base with and be like, hey, remember that time when Brando, when Hannah quit, but we, you voted for Brand, whatever, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting thing that we, after discussing the episode a lot with people, it was brought to my attention that happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. So what were those dynamics? And I really am curious to find out. Do you think you saw any kind of relationship between Kendra and Emily Bloom in the edit that we saw?
No, I really don't think there was a huge amount of evidence pointing to that. And I think it comes down to the fact that even when emotions are coming into play, as we see with her response in Tribal, Emily cares a lot about the numbers, the analytics. I know she talks about the qualitative and the quantitative, but ultimately I think that Emily is a person who really cares about the quantitative. She talks about this during Tribal, about the fact that she is and has shown to be someone who like goes where it makes sense logically. She's a logical person. So I feel like even though it would make sense for Kendra and her kumbaya astrological emotional sort of gameplay, which she said she doesn't want to be emotional, but I've seen some evidence that points to the fact that she's a little bit more emotional, especially in comparison to Emily. I don't think that like those two are necessarily indebted to each other, and they don't see it that way. Maybe Kendra does, but Emily is ultimately there to make like the best move for her. And as she says in Tribal, I can't remember exactly her quote, but it was something to the effect of like, I am treating these people as chess pieces because this is a game, and I know that there are emotions involved, but I have to do this because this is the way the game works. I think that's just the way that Emily looks at it, and unfortunately, Kendra happened to be a casualty of that, and that's just the way it ended up. But I have to say, I was gutted to see Kendra's reaction to Brando going. Her face, the pain in her expression, that hurt me more than anything I've seen on Survivor in a really long time.
Yeah, she was so shocked. And I didn't realize she was going to be that shocked, which is honestly why we were talking about all of like that specifically, because there had to have been a reason to have been so shocked. I mean, yes, people could lie or whatever, but I feel like I think there's something to that. And I'm super interested. And it was funny. I feel like on the internet, I kept seeing everywhere where like Kendra is going to go on and avenge Brando by getting out Drew. But I actually think that it'll be because I do think that Kendra is a slightly more emotional player. Maybe not the most emotional, but I do think that she's more of an emotional player than let's say Emily or Drew or whatever. And so I personally actually think that it might be that revenge. She might try to go and get Emily out as revenge, because I feel like Emily's the person that blindsided Kendra. Nobody else, like it wasn't. Kendra knew that Austin and Drew were going against them too. So the person who blindsided Kendra was Emily. It wasn't Drew. So I'm interested to see how this like fallout happens back at the tribe. The fact that we're getting everyone on one beach, happening the next episode. So I'm meaning that she'll also have Katura and Kelly to talk to about this. So I feel like, and I'm interested to see in Kelly's reaction to Brando not being there because Brando was Kelly's number one.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that to say, I just am interested to see how this all plays into next episode.
Yeah, so much messiness. Brando goes. We've got an interesting next episode preview, and we will highlight who will be receiving our awards right after this break.
What's up, guys? I'm Todd Herzog, the winner of Survivor China, and I want to welcome you to Todd's Pop Shop. Here, me and my husband Jess, we custom make Funko Pops. We'll make literally anybody or anything you could imagine. But being that we're here listening to the Survivor Now podcast, I'm assuming you're all Survivor fans. So take a look at these. Some custom Funkos of your favorite Survivor winners, Sandra and Yule. Or how about Big Brother fans? Suri Goddess herself playing the game of Big Brother. You can also get her in Survivor form. Or maybe yourself with your favorite buff and a torch playing the game. But even better, get yourself with your favorite player like Nora here with Ozzy. And since you're listening to the Survivor Now podcast, if you mention this ad, you will get $10 off your first order and free shipping. All season long, Survivor 45 should be a good one. Mention this ad, $10 off and free shipping. I'll be watching too, still a diehard fan to this day. Hit me up on Instagram, Todd's Pop Shop, or toddspopshop@gmail.com, or on Facebook, and I will see you soon.
Todd Herzog is genuinely so talented at what he does. Like,
Yeah.
imagine being a Survivor winner and also being like a multifaceted artist who's just like kind of good at everything and especially good at art. Like, big props to Todd.
I know. I follow him on Instagram, and I love seeing everything he posts, and especially with the ones that aren't like Survivor related. The pop, what are they called?
Funko Pops?
Funko Pop. When he posts the ones that aren't Survivor related, that are just like, he did like the Haunted Mansion heads and all this stuff. He's just like so good at them. I love looking at them and see how good they are.
Seriously, go Todd. And now is the episode, or the part of the episode where we give away awards. So we're going to give away the Social Butterfly Award to the person we feel played the best socially this week. Tegwyth, who are you feeling as the Social Butterfly of episode 5?
So I feel like there are a couple of contenders for this one. My first one I probably would say is Caleb, and as he comes up almost every single episode, he is incredibly social. I think that he relies mainly on a social game more than anything else, even though he is such a physical person. I just feel like he has a very good social game, and he's here for that. So Caleb is always in the running for me, or at least so far this season. My next one, honestly, weirdly, is Drew. And I say that mainly because he and Austin were able to kind of bring somebody into their folds that was the turning point, was the thing to keep them both in the game. And I do feel like this might be an alliance that, will be around for a longer time. And so I feel like that is a very important social thing, is to be loyal, to, have a group around you that you trust. And so weirdly enough, Drew was in the running for me this week. And then I had one other person, but I can't remember who the other person was in the running. So I guess they're out. Sorry. And I'm honestly, just to be different than I usually am, I think I am going to have to go with Drew for this one. Because I know that he made maybe a faux pas of saying no to an alliance, but I think he really has a really amazing bond with Austin. And that's not to say that that's just what a social game is. It's not just to have one alliance. It's to be, you want votes in the end, and that's what gives you the social game. But I feel like if you have that kind of loyalty to one person and are willing to trust some other people to bring into, your alliance with you, I think that shows somebody who is very thoughtful in their alliances and is willing to kind of like go the distance and do some gutsy things for your alliance. And so out of left field, I guess I'm going with Drew this week.
Honestly, I think I have to agree with you. You've convinced me.
Really?
Yeah, Drew, despite some of the ways that he's been kind of boring in his delivery of some analogies in confessional, he's played a strong social game, especially in his maximization of his relationship with Austin. And as a result of that, and the fact that he was able to just kind of curb Brando's proposition for an alliance and still be in a good position, I'm gonna have to give it to Drew. And props to your Pokemon competitive play. I'm really curious. Um, Drew, if you're out there, what is your favorite Pokemon? Let's have a conversation about this. Let's start a discourse. And on the other end of the spectrum, we've got the driver of the social struggle bus, Tegwyth, who is driving this for you. Beep beep.
I have no idea. This one I've been thinking about a lot, and this is a difficult one for me. I feel like I want to like I don't feel like it's anybody on Reba this week. We didn't see a ton of Reba. And if it would be anybody on Reba, I feel like it'd be Sifu. But I honestly don't feel like he had any huge like faux pas or anything bad that happened this week that we saw. So I honestly feel like it, because I mean, he has that idol, that fake idol, but people believe it. And I don't think that that's a knock against him. So I don't think it's anybody on Reba. On Lulu, I mean, there's always the Bruce and Katora. And I do feel like seeing Katora look for the idol and get caught, I feel like is not a great thing for her, but that's not necessarily a social thing. That is very much a, it's something else. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know. I think I might either have to go Kendra, just for the fact that she was on the wrong side of the vote and now she is on the outs with her tribe of 4, but it's going to be a merge, so it doesn't really matter. Or I'm actually thinking maybe J Maya. Thinking J Maya because I feel like saying that out loud on the tribe, on your mat in front of everybody, is a really weird thing to do. I think it's a weird move. I think it puts somebody that you want to work with in a bad position. I think it shows everybody that who you want to work with. Even though they obviously were on your original tribe, but I think that it just shows that, like, I really do actually want to work with this person. And then I also feel like the fact that she was so pushing hard to get the amulets, and now Austin maybe doesn't necessarily want to work with her anymore, and she already told everyone that she wants to work with him. I think it'll have to maybe be J Maya for me this week. I've convinced myself.
Well, that is very valid. J Maya did have some missteps this week. And for me, I'm going to have to go with Bruce. I think Bruce rubbed some people the wrong way with the fact that he was kind of pushy. And it wasn't just Katura being in confessional, being like, there goes Bruce again. There are people, including Caleb, who were like, he's being a little too much right now. So I'm going to have to go with Bruce. I still love him. I still want to grab drinks with Bruce at some point because he's just this magnetic, super warm, hilarious person. And even though Gandia may not be enthralled by his antics, I certainly am. So that is our award section for this episode. Any final comments, Tegwyth?
I think, like I said at the beginning, I do want to say this is very exciting for me. It was an editing thing. And at the beginning of the episode, when they were showing scenes from the previous episode, I said to Ryan, why don't they just have Jeff go previously on Survivor? And then mere seconds after I said that, we heard previously on Survivor. And I screamed. I screamed so loud. I was so excited to hear previously on again. You would think that I just won the lottery. Like, I don't know why that made me so happy, but it made me so, and the theme song, we're getting the auction. Like, I just feel like they keep giving me things that I've wanted for so long, and it makes me so happy. So I want to thank the producers yet again. 90 minutes, the auction, the theme song, the title sequence, and now previously on Survivor. I mean, what more can a girl ask for? I'm so happy.
A new location. That's what you can ask for.
True.
But so you're telling me that all of these things that harken back to old school Survivor you miss? Oh, wow. It's almost like old school Survivor was where it's at. craziness. But thank
Mm.
you all so much for listening to Survivor Social. Feel free to send us your own questions, comments, concerns at Survivor Socialites on Instagram or survivorsocialpod@gmail.com, and we'll answer them right here. Yes, right here. And thanks again for tuning in, and we will catch you next week.